Ladies and gentlemen, the greatest thing to come out of Australia since koala bears, the outstanding performer of the year, Cate Blanchett.
I was hoping I was going to sit on the other side, because this is a little revealing.
Oh, well, we can trade if you
Anyway,
want.
we'll see how we go. I'm not wearing knickers.
We are so honored and thrilled that you're back here. Thank you for coming. And I want to begin by just going back to the very beginning, if we can. Can you share for anyone who may not know where you were born and raised and what your folks did for a living?
I was born and raised in Melbourne, Australia. Oh, hello. Australia is dark tonight. And my mother was a teacher, and my father was in the US Navy, and he had decided to be a Unitarian minister, and he went to the Antarctic to find God, and the ship broke down, and he found my mother.
Hey.
And so
Thank goodness.
Here I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as a kid, acting, you have said in the past, was just sort of a form of childcare, I guess, right? You were put into kind of Saturday classes.
What, the closet under the stairs?
Right. But even when you went off to university, this was not the path you were necessarily going on. I read museum curator was at one point the goal. So how do you go from that outlook to then going off to drama school?
Yeah, I studied fine arts and economics, and I didn't ever think that acting was something that you could do beyond a hobby. I didn't have any examples in my grandfather was an artist, he was a painter, but he was also a mechanic. It wasn't something that you earned a living from. And, after my father passed away, it was just, you had to be financially secure. So
This was when you were very young.
Yeah,
he was very young.
Yeah, he was 40 when he died, yeah. So, I didn't ever think about it at all. And the student union was very active, so I did a lot of plays, directed a lot of plays, was in a lot of plays. And then someone who didn't particularly like me suggested I auditioned for drama school, which was in another state. So I took the advice and I left.
Now, this is the National Institute of Dramatic Art.
That's right, yeah.
Which has produced quite a few tremendous actors right over the years. When you were there was somebody named Lindy Davis, right, as your third year?
Yes.
You've said that her approach, I don't know if it's still something that you use today when you act, but that it really made a big impression on you at the time. Why was that?
Yes, I think it was quite an eclectic drama school. We tried lots of different techniques, and technique is useful for problem solving, but if things are flowing, you don't think about your technique. It's like you don't think about your homework. You do all your homework, but no one wants to see that. But she was very much about the text and freeing your body in space. So she, instead of holding a script when you were in a rehearsal room, because I trained to work in the theatre, because the Australian film industry punches above its weight internationally, but it's a very small industry, and I was never that girl. I didn't think I'd ever work in the film industry, so I was just happy working in the theatre. And so you'd be in a rehearsal room, and all of the text would be projected on the walls so that you were free to move. And she introduced this really interesting concept to me very early. I found it interesting, that to make somebody else's words your own is a really, really complicated neuro-linguistic process. We think it's easy, but to actually own that language and choose those words and know why and what you want, what you're trying to communicate beneath the words is a very complicated thing to do. So she felt that had to be inside your body. And if I had my way over, I would have worked with Martha Graham or been a Butoh dancer, or I feel most free in a way when I'm on stage. And that was what was so great about doing Tar, was that it had that sort of performance component in it. So I felt like it was a homecoming.
Totally. After graduating from, you guys call it NIDA or something?
NIDA.
NIDA. After graduating from there, you did something that I guess in a weird way might have been a secret weapon going out into the professional world. You were a reader for a casting director.
I think it's a nice way of saying I was an unemployed actor. Which is actually what I was. But one of the biggest casting directors had seen my shocking audition they didn't know what to do with me. I don't think I knew what to do with myself really, and so I chose some piece that just didn't. You have to learn how to audition. It took me a long time to do that, to learn how to be seen in a way. And so she saw something in me and would call me in 2 or 3 times a week, and I would read opposite actors who were auditioning. And it was just even if I never took acting any further, from an anthropological point of view, it was fascinating to watch someone walk in the door and going, just turn around and go out because you've already lost the job. It was fascinating. And then I realized also that you can't take it personally because I was so invisible to the people who were casting. I was just the reader. I would hear them speak about actors, and in a way, they were looking for someone taller, shorter, of a different ethnicity or whatever, whatever their sort of idea of what was right for the role, and had very little to do with that actor's skill often.
And so when you then are going and auditioning after that, you can kind of let go a little more, maybe?
Kind of. That was the
idea, right?
But those rooms can feel a bit airless. And I think if you can get through an audition, you can definitely do the job.
Once you started working, though, I know...
This is a deep dive.
Oh, yeah, no, we got no rush. I don't know about you.
Do you want me to lie down?
Once you started working on the stage in Sydney, it was pretty well received, right? I mean, first person to win Best Actress and Best Newcomer at their equivalent of the Tonys. You were really impressing people, and I think it was, as you say, screen acting doesn't sound like it was on the agenda list, but it sort of indirectly came about because of the theater work, right?
Yes, actually, a casting director who was working a lot with working title at the time had seen me play Nina in a production of The Seagull, and for some reason thought I should play Queen Elizabeth. I like that in a casting director.
Right.
It's a very, very... Eric Cantona, the famous football player, also played the Duke of Anjou. So it was a very kind of eclectic cast. But yes, so that it came out of... and Shekhar Kapoor, who directed it, said that he'd seen Gillian Armstrong had cast me as really fought for an Australian to play this Australian role, because at that particular point it wasn't guaranteed.
For Oscar and Lucinda.
Yeah. And Fox Studios were starting in Australia, and so they got me cheap, and I got a 3-picture deal. Is that right? My agent's here tonight.
Just Oscar and Lucinda, 97, Elizabeth, 98, and all of a sudden, first Oscar nomination, and people are saying, we better, who's Cate Blanchett? We better pay attention, right?
I know, it was literally like I didn't even know there was a festival in Venice. I showed up and I didn't have a dress, and someone from Dolce & Gabbana, I think, lent me a dress. I have no recollection about what happened that night. Absolutely none. No, I was deer in the headlights, yeah.
And I mean, I imagine it must have been fairly jarring when you're essentially like right in the deep end like that, and then in a good way, but I mean, like right after that it hasn't stopped. I mean, Talented Mr. Ripley was the next year for Eddie Minghella, and others that we're going to obviously come to, but I guess I just wonder, how did you acclimate, first of all, to now, you've always gone back and forth between screen acting and stage acting.
Yeah.
But in those, early years, people must have been saying, strike while the iron's hot, right? You've got a big movie with Elizabeth, you're the star of it, and...
Yeah, but the interesting thing is, after I played Elizabeth I, there was a lot of scripts that came in with characters with the most lines, and they were all basically the same character, just in different costumes. And so I realised very quickly that they were just wanting you to do what you'd done before, but they could just change the costume designer and the cinematographer. And so that's why I was so excited to work with Minghella on this little nugget of a role. That's where I met the wonderful, late, great Philip Seymour Hoffman. He and I both had small roles, and so we spent 3 months together.
And the excitement, though, you're saying, was that it was not a period costume.
Yeah, but it wasn't anything to. It was worlds away from the character I'd played. Or I took a very small role in a film which I think about 2.5 people saw, called Pushing Tin, where I met John Cusack and Billy Bob and Angelina, and I played the wife of a air traffic controller. That was a scary film, working out how the air traffic controlling around the New York area actually works. Didn't fly for a while after that.
Well, let's pause and take a look at Cate as the Virgin Queen in Shekhar Kapur's Elizabeth in 1998, and then also in Anthony Minghella's The Talented Mr. Ripley in 1999.